Hello and hello and welcome. All you'll see is the flashing light or the green light if I have it that way. Hopefully you can hear me, hopefully you can see me. You can probably also hear a rather loud Dharma talk in the little house next door. The old lady there is somewhat hard of hearing, so she likes to have Buddhist TV, I think it is, live Dharma Decimas or recorded, I'm not sure, quite loud at this time, but I think it's due to finish. It's gone quiet now. We're joined by the traffic, the buses and the scooters, and maybe very soon the bread van playing its little tune. These things I don't notice at all, living on this busy main road. One gets used to the sounds of one's environment, and only helps to tune our senses inwardly towards our focus of awareness on the breath or our meditation object, however we're practicing. But you do notice the silence as the traffic dies down, and then you hear the Sinhalese Dharma next door. Okay, I'm going to move straight on with some of these questions. I'm inside and not on the beach because it's been raining rather a lot, and this afternoon, when it wasn't raining, I had something else I had to go and do with my helper Gamini. So now we can, this early part of the evening, look at some of your comments and questions. Let me check the time. Is that the real time or the screen? Yes, okay. So I won't read the whole comment, but somebody's describing their development in meditation, in the practice. I think the cooling down, the settling, becoming more aware, and seeing the benefits that the practice has, as one does with time. It takes a little while, it's not instant, but we progress slowly, like we age. You can look in a mirror, you look no different from day to day, but you look at a photograph from 5 years ago and you look very different, and it's much like this with the practice. And your question is with regards to people around you whom seem to be rushing around here and there, mindlessly really, on autopilot, doing this and that. And perhaps you're noticing this more in your newly found karma state. First thing I'll say is if you're reacting to that, then you need to be practicing more to not feel that reactive aversion in other people's turmoil, but to transfer that more into compassion, which I think is what you're doing or attempting to do, by asking also this question as to what can you do to set an example for others. Well, that is just simply following this Noble Eightfold Path and practicing. It isn't a case of anything specific, but as you develop, people will notice the change. If they ask, you can explain why you've changed and how you've changed. They may tell you how you've changed. You can explain why. That you're practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. This is all you can do. We cannot change everyone else. This isn't a religion of an evangelical religion of proselytization. We don't go out trying to convert people. We simply look after ourselves with our own practice and set an example for others to follow. Now, it may be that in a busy work environment, this will be very hard to spot for others. They may not even notice you. It doesn't matter. If you've become invisible to your colleagues, you're progressing well along the path. Don't worry too much about others. If you can help someone when they ask, then do so. out of compassion, out of metta, loving kindness. But don't let it concern you that others aren't changing as a result of your practice straight away. Eventually, yes, maybe some people will pick up on it and they will change. Somebody asking about ordination process. I've actually just sent them the two links that I could find. How to become a Buddhist monk, and I think the other one's called How and Why I Became a Buddhist monk, which is more about my story, as I think back at the time I was being asked quite a lot to talk about my experience of coming from lay life into Buddhist life. Now, I do get asked this question a lot, and I will talk about it again one day, but those videos are not old. They were in Thailand, and within that is, of course, the last year, in fact the last 6 or 7 months. So you can look back. Any of these, many of your questions can really, I know it's hard perhaps to go trawling through older videos. You'd like to get the question answered afresh, but if you want to listen to a talk on a subject, if you put in the search English Buddhist Monk followed by the topic, so addiction, depression, dependent origination, meditation, how to sit, how to wear robes, how to become a monk, where are you, any of these things, you will get a video, because I've made so many of them, talking like this each and every day, more or less as I do. They stay there. I don't know whether they stay there forever. I mean, they stay somewhere, I'm not sure where, but they don't go away, I suppose, unless I delete them. But they're still there, over a year's worth now, covering most topics, and what I've said back then won't change much. Now, of course, I'm learning all of the time. I'm training too. This is a long, arduous path of training in the Buddha's teachings, in the Dharma. So as I learn from my experiences, I'm sharing that with you also. So you can just simply wait. You don't have to trawl back through old videos, because each and every one of these subjects will come up again. These talks are cyclical. They begin and go through a sort of a cycle, really following the Noble Eightfold Path and our practice. And also with the lunar months, as they work in our tradition or in Buddhism, following Vipassana days, there are subject matters that get repeated often in terms of sila, how to keep sila. And always there is conversation, talk, with regards to questions about meditation. Perhaps not so many questions about meditation as I'd like, because a lot of these questions are speculative, more about my things that I don't know, my background, things I'm doing, and sometimes I think it's good, it's useful, it's very useful, because you're allowing me the opportunity to talk not just about meditation, but about how to put the Buddha's teachings, this Dharma, into practice in everyday life. And that is important. So keep those questions coming, but please also ask about meditation as well. Many people email me also, and that's good too, and I answer those people directly, but I don't really have time to include the email questions that often in this questions and answers talks, because there are quite a few of them, and they're usually part of quite a long email, so I can reply to them quite quickly, no problem at all, and I really enjoy doing that. It doesn't interfere with my practice at all. But to go through a long email and select different questions, even if you do it for me, it still requires that it's going the extra mile, which is a no problem, going the extra mile in the practice, but I don't want to go any extra miles in a different direction off of my practice, my own practice of really meditation and renunciation. So did I answer your question? Yes, just watch those old videos. Right, this is a long one, but the questions I think are at the end. Well, it's quite interesting in a way. So you're asking me what are the differences of each Theravada country in terms of Buddhism. So you're not asking me the differences between Theravada and Mahayana, which is the most common question, and I'm glad you're not asking me that again, because I don't think that is one that I have answered at all very often. But many people do, other monks I mean, on YouTube. You're asking me what are the differences between Theravada country, differences of each Theravada country in terms of Buddhism. The ones foreigners seem to commonly go to are Sri Lanka, Thailand and Myanmar. Because that's really it. If you go further afield, go into Cambodia, Laos, and then if you go further afield it gets very complicated and different. But really the three main Theravada countries, the southern school of Buddhism, Theravada, are Myanmar, Thailand and Sri Lanka. And it is very different in each country. In each country, it's very different in different traditions. I think we should get away from this. I've got many questions here. What tradition are you? Which did you ordain in? Why are you this and then you were that? It's really not, doesn't matter. It's what you practice, which you're practicing the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path in Theravada Buddhism. So we're learning about practicing that from the Pali Canon. So the Vinaya Pitaka is the teachings of the Buddha on our way to behave. And although it's addressed towards monks, it does help lay people also in an understanding of bringing about a very focused attention on very purification of your virtue, your morality. Then the Sutta Pitaka, which is all of the stories, all of the teachings of the Buddha to his disciples and to lay people, and to all kinds of people from different walks of life, which you can apply to your own lives and your own experiences. So they're very useful. And then if you're interested later on, you can get into the more intellectual side of commentaries like the Abhidharma Pitaka. This is the third of these baskets of teachings. But really for now it should be the Sutta Pitaka that you're looking at. And these three Theravada countries do interpret those through the commentaries, that in those suttas quite differently, and culturally they have influences upon their practices, not only in the temple but in their everyday lives. So you'll see different rites and rituals, you might call them, or devotional practices that come along and encompass all of their practice, that are different here in Sri Lanka to, say, I've not been to Myanmar so I don't know, but certainly it's very different here to in Thailand. But for me, I stick to the real lowest common denominator of it all and really follow the Sutta Pitaka and the teachings of the Buddha quite literally, and the Vinaya quite literally. I follow the Noble Eightfold Path as literally and as close to as I possibly can, and try not to deviate from that by getting too intellectual with too much sutta study. I have done all that previously, but now is my time in my progress for just pure practice. And also this is part of my practice, talking to you in response to your comments and questions, by using those as stimuli to really delve deep, investigate my understanding so far, and equate some of your experiences with my own experiences, but as a monk, coming from lay life, and now as a monk, and now a monk in solitude, by comparison to your own experiences still living in the world, as the former question clearly demonstrated, with dealing with others in the workplace when they're not changing like you are. Also, you are asking, does knowledge of Pali help you learn Sinhala? How do you say it? The language, is it Sinhala, Sinhalese, or Sinhalese? I'm not sure. Sinhala. You know, I think, because you know more about this stuff than me, from the sounds of it, Sri Lanka and such like. Anyway, does Pali help with learning that? Probably, and it certainly does probably with Thai also, because Thai is very made up of a lot of the Pali language. Apparently it's 70% Pali, the Thai language. I'm not sure. Do you know, I'm a very lazy old man. I haven't bothered learning any languages wherever I've been. You might think that is not very polite, it's rude, but if you look at all the countries I've lived in, if you include India in that, each state has a different language in India, and I've lived in quite a few different states in India. So if I was to have learned the languages in the different countries I've lived in over just since I've been a practicing Buddhist, frankly, I've never been anywhere long enough to have learned them very well, and I'd know lots of little bits of different languages, which wouldn't be much use to where I am in the present moment. You can only speak one language in the country. If you're in India, you need to speak Hindi plus the local language. So where I was in the Karnataka state, you needed to speak English, Hindi, and Kannada. Well, as I could get by on English and knowing enough Dharma words, Pali, it's sufficient for me to survive, as it was in Thailand and here. I'm not a tourist. I don't need to be speaking to people about anything other than Dharma. And that doesn't involve, other than in this situation, a Dharma talk, any conversational skills in terms of language or the ability to learn and speak languages. And I always discourage people from listening to Dharma in a foreign tongue, yes, a foreign language, but also even I don't personally, apart from some very, very some highly attained and very well spoken in English foreign monks that I do listen to their Dharma talks, whom are very few. Listening to most Dharma talks in English from someone whom English is not their mother tongue, I find unhelpful, unuseful. It doesn't, there's that word again, resonate with me. When there are so many English-speaking Dharma offerings, Dharma talks available, I choose to listen to those. So I would never even consider trying to learn a foreign language and then talk about the Dharma in that language. It's very difficult to talk about it accurately is not the right word, but to convey the message of Dharma skillfully in your own mother tongue. To translate it into another language, people do it and they're very clever, but I don't think it's the way to convey Dharma these days. Of course it used to have to be the case, but not anymore. So we should move with the times. Otherwise I wouldn't be even sitting here talking to you via this medium. If indeed I am. Did I push the button? Well, if I didn't, then I'll have to do it again. I haven't deleted the questions. So, language makes you practice. Yes, so I think you were kind of assuming when I go to different countries I learn the language. No, I don't learn the language. I try to learn to say hello, and you know, as monks, we're not talking to anybody. This is the point. I mean, we'd have little opportunity to exercise. When we are talking to someone, it's usually in a sort of an emergency situation where you find someone who can speak English. Yes. Not necessary. This is not. It's very important as travellers, as tourists, that yes, you go to a country, stay any length of time. It's good manners to practice their language, use some of their words, learn the language, of course, and a skillful way of behaving. It shows respect for your hosts. But people don't expect that of monks. We're not here to talk to anybody. I have people come to see me here, and they don't speak English, but they still do all the same as people who come who do speak English. No one needs to speak. They know what to do. They offer some dana. I give them some blessings. We maybe have some chanting. Depends on what they're here for. We do some other things. There's no talking necessary. Okay. Maybe I went on that about too much about that one, really. Hi, Bhante. I want to ask if we stop... Oh dear. Took me by surprise, sorry. If we stop sex activities, how do we prevent prostate cancer? I don't think it's got anything to do with it, so I'll just move on. I think prostate cancer is not related to your sexual activity, as far as I know, but maybe ask a doctor if you're concerned about such a thing. Perhaps not a monk. What monastery is the... I see what you're saying though, yeah. But I don't know of any monks who have obviously stopped all sexual activities that have had prostate cancer. Well, certainly can't say that it's extra prevalent is the word, or extra more monks have prostate cancer than anyone else because of that. I've never heard of a monk having prostate cancer. We probably wouldn't know because we're not getting tests of all this and that and the other. We just know we're going to die, age, get sick and die. So we might die of something like that and not even know we had it. It happens. We're in funny parts of the world, and it's not... we're not constantly going to the hospital, to the doctor. I'm laughing now because that's where I've just been. But that's an injury, an old injury, not one of these ailments that we all get as we age, get old and get sick and die. But yeah, that's where I've been with Gamini this afternoon, on a Sunday as well. It's very strange. Because I needed to see a doctor, which he took me to the other day, who then said I needed to... There's a different process how you go through getting treatment medically in Sri Lanka that I'm very unfamiliar with. It's not similar to anywhere else I've ever been. Anyway, we got there in the end with his help. I'm very grateful to him. And I had a scan, and I now have an appointment with someone who can fix the little problem. Nothing serious. It's literally a physical injury that I incurred some years ago, had repaired, and that repair I think's now got a bit weak, or it's I don't know what. I won't go into it. It's boring. It's repairable, but you have to go through the process of finding the doctor, then getting the referral, then booking a surgeon, and then having the treatment, the surgery. I'm very happy to say that here in Sri Lanka that is a very easy process, even though I didn't understand exactly how it was going, how it was working, but very much quicker than it might have been if I was at home, for instance, in England. Anyway, I wasn't going to talk about that. So that might come up though later on. Oh yeah. But during the scan, the doctor did mention what you just said and said that that's all fine. So I'm happy to say that that can answer your question, maybe. So for a question I wasn't going to answer, I spent a lot of time on it, didn't I? Okay. Oh, well, now we've got that question. Now that's just a coincidence, isn't it? What are the differences between the major schools of Buddhism? You know the encyclopedia, Wikipedia differences, but how do you get along in practice? And then you go on to say you find Christian monks fighting each other over certain things and this, that and the other. I won't talk so much about... Christian monk practice is something quite different to Buddhist monk practice. So I'm not really sure the specifics of what your question is, but I'm not going to talk about the differences between Mahayana and Theravada Buddhism specifically now. That's a whole talk, really. How do I find, in terms of Buddhist practice, the differences? Well, you'll find usually where you're living in Buddhist countries, it's one or here's a Theravada country, but then the different schools of Theravada vary considerably. Don't worry about everybody else. It's all. I know there's this great feeling of compassion and loving kindness and trying to save the world, but if you spend all of your time doing that, you're not practicing. Just worry about your own practice. Find a practice that is suitable for you. I've found a very simple way of practicing Theravada Buddhism. I'm in a Theravada country. I'm free to meditate along a good part of the day. and it suits me. Now, it wouldn't suit everybody. Many people would rather be in a monastery, a big monastery with lots going on and activities, or some would like to be in a small forest hermitage. You know, we all vary. Find something that suits you. Don't worry so much about what's affecting you through this doctrinal side of religion, the religiosity of it. Concentrate on the practice. Everything else will just fall into place. You'll find a slot. You'll eventually just be like a peg that drops into the peg hole when a place comes up that you feel comfortable in. For instance, I've come here. I really enjoy the activity, and it's part of my practice of going on Pindapat, arms around, every day. Now, many monks like to do that on occasions, but here certainly not very often, if ever. In this area, no one does it. Only I'm the only monk who does it. And there's many monks in this area. But I really find it helpful to my practice of developing metta, karuna, loving kindness, compassion, joy for others, and equanimity also, because there is a degree of effort and inconvenience and suffering and not knowing what you're going to eat, plus the discipline. I enjoy that very much. And having come to this country and settled in this place, I've, like that peg, dropped into my peg hole as a good part of my practice each and every day. Also receiving people here who come to talk to me, ask me things, or speak to when I'm on Pindapat a little, not so much, but they can then find me from that to come here. And then doing what I'm doing here on these YouTube talks. It all fits in to my practice, but my main day is around, well, sila is ongoing. It's this effort of keeping the precepts as a monk. There are so many, and fitting that into the activities of the day, which are based, are based around a monk's life. So that is structured to support these precepts, as is the Vinaya. So that's not too difficult. And also the support of the local community, people, lay people, upasakas, upasakars, whom really do support you in keeping precepts. I had to, because Gamini didn't turn up, I had to start walking, and I had to go into a shop and get something on the way, which I did. But everybody came to my aid, knowing I was a monk and knew I wouldn't have money and it was cheap and they pay for it and no problems at all. So you see, that's the support I have in terms of looking after my sila, my discipline, the Vinaya. And then meditation. And I'm able to meditate 6 to 9 hours every day. Now, not all in one go. I like to meditate for a couple of hours or 3 hours. Probably it's only a couple of hours. I don't specifically time my meditation, but I meditate from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. So that's 3 hours, but probably only maybe 2 hours of that is meditation. And then in the evenings the same. But during the day, 1 hour here, a couple of hours there, I can get up to 6 to 9 hours of sitting formal meditation here or down in the little forested area on the edge of the beach there, which is very private, very secluded, and very peaceful and cool and very fly and bug free. So I have slotted in, and I'm not worried. There's so much of the difference in terms of Theravadian culture in this country and how the monks and what they do. I have been to some functions, some house invitations with the other monks, and I knew what was going on, but I didn't have to change anything about my own practice, although they didn't do things quite as I do them. But there was nothing wrong with what they were doing. And they understand that I do my thing, they do their thing. And this is how it works. We're all very accommodating with each other. Now the same goes if you are in a Theravada Sangha next to a Mahayana Sangha. You'd all help each other. In California you've got the Abhayagiri monks, Theravada, Thai Forest tradition in the Ajahn Chah lineage, quite close to a Mahayana Master Shu, or whatever his name is, Buddhist temple of the northern school, completely different, but they're very, very closely related in terms of they get together, they share ideas. Master Shu gave them the land to build this monastery. So we work together harmoniously. Anything you see other than that is outside of the Buddha's teachings, outside of this sasana, the religion. So when you see I don't know, I mean, I've seen some news clippings recently came up on my YouTube thing about old problems in Myanmar or Sri Lanka with monks screaming and shouting political jargon. That's really not within the sasana, as far as I'm concerned. That is just lay people screaming and shouting politics who seem to be looking like monks. That isn't monastic life. We have nothing to do with politics, economics, with physical, geographical is the word I'm looking for, political or geographical boundaries. It's irrelevant. Now, of course, we do have to adhere to laws of wherever we're staying. We mustn't breach those laws. But we do have to keep our own Vinaya. If we are in a country where it's impossible to keep our Vinaya, we'd have to go to a different country for one reason or another, if that was a difficult thing. But if we're in a country whereby we can keep our Vinaya and they have some rules that we don't agree with, it doesn't matter, we keep those rules because we are guests and they are our hosts, so we respect their laws. So in practice, it's not a problem. It doesn't come, and it's quite okay and acceptable. Your Wikipedia is the best explanation, frankly, of that side of it in terms of the technical side of the differences. Maybe. I haven't looked at that for a long time, so maybe not. Do you have a video on how to wear robes? Yes, I sent you the link. Someone doesn't agree with my loneliness. They say we need, as a sort of as a race, we need this interaction with family. We need this. We need to expose love to others. And without this loving relationship, then it's a problem. Well, it's okay. You can disagree, but it's not so. I mean, if you don't experience solitude and appreciate it through your own volition, so you try solitude, go away from all of your family, from your friends, from your loved ones, from your dog or your cat, and be alone for a while and experience it. Because if you don't, when you are forced to experience it, when you have no choice, it will be that much harder. When you learn to enjoy it, when you have the opportunity to choose solitude, you can then experience it the same way when it is forced upon you. Ultimately, we are going to die. No one's coming with you. You may have your entire family, all of your loved ones, wife, children, everybody around your bedside. But you're dying alone. You'll take that last breath of your own accord, without company. Physical company, yes. Emotional support, yes. But you don't know where you're going. You're alone at that moment of death. It's different when we're born. We're coming from the womb of our mother, and we haven't got a very good idea of the exact moment of the beginning of life. Whether it's in the womb or our first breath, there's no precise moment. But death, more or less, there is. There's a switch off of this body on this brain. And that moment, you're alone with. Get used to it. It will happen. It is going to happen. It's inevitable. And it'll be all the much harder to deal with if you've not put yourself in a position to understand being alone, practiced it, and learned to see the benefits in it, and more importantly that, enjoy it. Enjoy solitude. Now I have this cat, but she's not here. She's a deva, not a deva as in our Buddhist Deva realms, heavenly realms. She's one of these divas, that's the word, isn't it? D-I-V-A. She's a showbiz cat. She only comes out when the camera's there. She'll disappear when you've gone. She comes for the chanting too. And now she tends to attack me. But when I bow, sometimes. But you're a good cat, aren't you? Oh, sorry, I didn't do anything. You're just jumpy sometimes. She's a very good friend. And she is company, but of a different sort. I've had to take responsibility for her because she does have no home. She is about to give birth, and what can I do? She goes out at night. I worry about this busy road for her, but yesterday she darted across it between the wheels of a very fast-moving lorry. How she got to the other side, I don't know. Now these kittens, I think, well, she's going to have to keep a very close eye on them, as probably will I. But I've had pets in other locations. If you look at the old videos, not pets, we don't have pets. I've had associations with different animals. In Gokana, my friends were all cows and things, really. Cows and monkeys and all sorts. But they varied. They varied over the time. And they come and go, as we come and go in these lives. So being alone is very important. Well, it's very important to understand it. So I understand what you're saying, but we don't always have the choice. So the subscriber is going on a course, a Vipassana course for 10 days, and although you'll be with others, you'll be alone. You won't be chatting with them. There won't be company. So you'll experience solitude, Chitta Viveka, you'll experience Kaya Viveka, even though you're with people. And it's often said that you can feel very lonely in a crowd. Of course you can, if you know nobody. It can be a very lonely place, more so than Kaya Viveka, physical, bodily solitude, when you're literally alone. So somebody's asking me about, actually I better leave that one because it needs a little more explanation and we've probably got time to give. Just a quick comment someone's made here. Monks are religion, path, not spiritual path as seers. Okay. So I think you're saying monks are a religious thing and not like sadhus, seers, or would be with this spiritual path. You know, we're neither monks, Buddhist monks. Of course, other monks in other religions, Christianity, Hinduism. I don't think the Islamic faiths have actual monks, but they have something of inclined towards that way of living, a renunciant life, a single life, or a community life. Anyway, different religions, but Buddhist monks, and I'm only talking about those, we're neither on a religious path or a spiritual path particularly. We are renunciants. We are letting go of all these worldly accoutrements in order to explore our minds, develop our wholesome mind states, reduce our unwholesome mind states, and be free from the attraction and the compulsive nature of our desires, be able to have mindfulness to understand those desires when they arise and allow them time to pass away, putting a little gap with mindfulness between seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and then grabbing, pulling towards us, or pushing and getting away from. We are putting some space between us and samsara in a way to develop this ability to become free from suffering in this lifetime. This is renunciation. It's not religion, it's not praying, it's not worshipping. And it isn't really this spiritual, mystical, magical seeking thing. There's nothing we're looking for. We're not looking for anything. There's nothing to find. It's all here within our own bodies and our thinking brains. And all that we have to observe this is not our thinking brain, but our mind. Think of our mind, our citta, as something separate from the thinking brain, something separate from the physical body. Like a heart-mind, you hear this expression. It's somewhere in between, but it's locationless. It's not within this body. It's the witness, the observer. It's what sees all that's going on in terms of our intellectual brain's reactions and our physical body's reactions to all that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think about. And it's able to take a back seat sometimes and say, no, I won't react through this training. So it's a practice. Monks, Buddhist monks are renunciants. It's as simple as that. We're giving things up, we're letting things go, we're trying to do. Someone agreeing about being alone is good, being a company in one's own company, because you can look inside, much like I was just saying, but you're also saying here that Wandami Bhanteji, being alone is like company to oneself. We can see ourselves inside, means our mind is totally able to come into our control. Actually, we live ourselves and with ourselves at this time. No. We cannot bring our mind into our control. This is anatta. We have no control over, do you know what your next thought will be? Ask yourself this question. You cannot know this. Mind, well, when you're referring to thinking brain, if you're thinking of citta, this too we cannot have any control over. What we have control over only is our actions of body, speech and mind in terms of, well, we don't have control. We point, we direct, we train our actions of body, which we call karma, actions of body, speech and mind in wholesome and skillful ways to develop good actions of body, speech and mind to result in, to have good results, which we call vipaka. So karma and vipaka, karma vipaka, actions and results, causes and consequences. What we do with our actions of body, speech and mind determines how things will turn out. We can't control our mind. We cannot control our brain. We cannot control our body. We cannot say heartbeat stop for a moment and then start again, or indeed if it decides to stop, we cannot say please start again. We just die. If our brains are thinking, they're thinking. We can only observe with that witness, that observer, the citta, the mind, what is going on there. And learn not to attach to what's going on, or to push away what's going on, or to cling to our own ideas of self, but to see those as just the results of causes and conditions we have put in place, both in this lifetime and previous lifetimes, or even within this lifetime through our different changes of persona, as we change so much as we grow through this life, through aging towards the end of our lives. There are so many different phases, and we change continuously. What is your tradition within Theravada? Thank you. Well, I'm just a Theravada Buddhist monk, and I've spent a lot of time in Thai Forest Buddhist Monasteries in the Ajahn Chah lineage. So in a way I've trained in that school. But I don't say I'm anything particularly other than a Theravada Buddhist monk, a Bhikkhu, because this likewise throughout history has changed. I mean, quite some time after the Buddha, when then there was just the Buddha and his disciples, and then sometime after the Buddha, when all of this got established, there were these Nikayas, which were the basis of today's modern different schools. And those sects have changed so many times and so often in so many different ways in all of the different generations since. One can trace some right back to the beginning through different lineages. And if you're interested in that, that's great. You can find a teacher who goes back to the Buddha and follow his lineage all the way back. My preceptor through Burmese connections, can also be traced his lineage all the way back. But the Mahatera Bhikkhu who ordained me, whilst I could do that, I don't know him very well, because as I said, this is just a function of formality. It's part of the process of becoming a bhikkhu. You go off to a temple, you're ordained, but your training is with your teacher that's close at hand, in the community, in the Sangha, where you've practiced as a lay person, become a anagarika, then become a samanera, and then become a bhikkhu. So you've grown up and if you want to know that one, it's the Mahabodhi Society of Bangalore, which is in India. But what can I say? Their training, their doctrine, their philosophy, everything is just as it is in the Pali Canon, as in the Theravada scriptures. In fact, in countries that aren't predominantly Buddhist, because India isn't, like India, like the UK, like America and Europe, where there are Buddhist monasteries, they are a little more pure in their version of Theravada. Because if you go to Theravada countries, or Buddhist countries that are Theravada, they have a lot of the cultural influences included in the process, which is where you'll find that certainly if you're a native of Thailand and you ordain there, you need to be in one of the sects or the other. And then if you want to go into another sect, you probably have to reordain again, depending on which sects it is. But for outsiders whom have trained, because Westerners have to go through a longer process of acceptance, of becoming a bhikkhu. Very much in Buddhist countries, you decide to become a monk, you walk into the monastery, and within a few days you're a bhikkhu. You might be a samanera for a very short while, but usually that's all included in the same ordination. So if you're a Sri Lankan or a Thai person, you can become a bhikkhu very quickly, and you stay a bhikkhu because they know you've been brought up in that environment. You don't need additional training. But in the UK, in the West, in different countries, even in India, you have to live in a monastery with bhikkhus who've been bhikkhus for a long time to learn about Buddhism in practice, learn about the religion. However much you know intellectually, you're not living it. So you have to live it for at least a year as an anagarika, at least a year as a samanera, and then you become a bhikkhu. But it takes even longer than that, really, because you're a year as a lay person, a couple of years as an anagarika, a couple of years as a samanera, and it can be up to 12 years or so before you even, or 8 or so years before you're even able to take upasampada, this higher ordination. So it's, I think we had that question again before, something similar, so it's a little unimportant really. Okay, I think that's come more or less to the end of the main body of those comments and questions. There is a few I've skipped through, not because if I've missed you out, it's not because they're very good questions, but they're perhaps either need a whole talk of their own, or when I've got not so many others around it. And I also need to check a little bit more closely to find the actual question in the context. I was just looking to see why it's gone dark and this candle's gone out, so I hope you could still see me. If not, it doesn't matter really, because you can just listen. Thank you for watching. I hope there's something there that's useful, and if so, please use it and share with others. You never know, someone might decide that meditation is a good thing, and keeping precepts is a good thing, as you already know. And those people who think maybe it's weird and wonderful or mystical might come to the realization that it's actually a very simple practice of morality, meditation, and becoming wise. But ultimately, becoming relieved from this suffering and finding happiness. Not finding it anywhere, seeing it within ourselves. Happiness, joy. So, thank you for watching. Balala's found lots of joy. I found her some robes and towels and things to make a little nest.